All right, hello. Looks like we're live. I am April Pajic. I'm the nonfiction genre editor for the Peauxdunque Review, and I'm so excited to be emceeing this event where we get to hear the winners of the Words of Music Writing Competition read some of their winning works today. So a little bit about the contest. The contest is part of the One Book, One New Orleans Fest and the Words of Music Writing Festival. This is the second year that the Peauxdunque Review has been involved with this, where we are reading for the contest and working with the judges to find the winners. And the work we got this year was so incredibly strong, and I'm really, really excited. All of these winners will be published and runner-ups, some of the runner-ups as well, will be published in issue 4 of the Peauxdunque Review, which is coming out any day now. We should have it back from the printer. And you can buy that at Tubby & Coos bookshop once we get it in. So without belaboring the point anymore, because I know we have a lot of winners and runners up, and I want to make sure that each of them gets plenty of time to read their piece. We're going to start with the poetry contest winners. And the poetry judge this year was Beth Ann Finley, who is a dear, dear friend of Peauxdunque and the poet laureate of Mississippi. And she selected, excuse me, as the winner, I'm so sorry. Beth Ann Finley selected as the winner of the poetry category, Guzzle at the End of the World by Elizabeth Gross. She had this to say about the poem, that Guzzle at the End of the World takes a fresh look at the tired, constant, low-grade terror of quarantine. The author finds in the guzzle form a perfect vehicle to get at the circular and claustrophobic feeling of the shelter in place, yet finds room from the startling weirdness of Zoom virtual backgrounds. This is a full and multi-layered poem. And I'm really excited to welcome Elizabeth Gross.
Thank you. Thank you so much to Words and Music, to One Book New Orleans, to Beth Ann Finley. I'm very honored to be reading for the contest. And I'll read 3 poems, starting with a poem that was listed with an honorable mention for the contest as well. But I also just want to say that it's a really difficult time to be making new work, and part of why this means so much to me is I'm going to read 3 poems, and they are all of the poems that I have worked on in any capacity since the beginning of the pandemic. And I have a workshop through New Orleans Writers Workshop to thank for any of it existing at all, and Toy Darracott in particular, as well as all of the members of that workshop in April. Very grateful to you all. So, passenger side window. All summer, the water is high, just underneath us, where the highway skirts the edge of the swamp. The few trees further out make V's of moving water, where the current slowly wears them down, halfway between a living thing and the ruin of that thing still standing. A few last vertical ambassadors between us and nothing. I mean, between your car barreling westward down the stream of the elevated highway and the lake. I want to say something about this landscape, what it does to me to take it in and take it in each week, never stopping to and from the prison where we teach, losing the light on the way back in the tunnel of green before we hit the water. Sometimes after we talk and talk, can't stop as soon as we pass the last of the razor wire. We want to remember everything everyone said, each rare human glimpse inside this place we're expected to forget, because this isn't where the story is or when. The story that matters is the past. What'd you do to get here? I can't deny wanting to know, but I can leave it in your car with my phone, my wallet, my keys, my water bottle, my hypothetical weapons, anything that doesn't fit in the clear plastic school bag I carry to clear all the checkpoints. I open the glove box, you open the trunk. This isn't the story that matters either. Their lives do not go blank like the missing horizon where lake meets sky. Other evenings after, we just drive, car radio scanning for its preset stations as I search my mind for the words that might help us put away whatever we witnessed inside or understand it. Somewhere between what we can't know and what we can't say, one night the moon burns huge and orange like a thumb over the camera lens through rare breaks in the trees. High and cool and bright by the time we reach the swamp where we can really see. Just now, when I mentioned the moon, I felt a moment of relief, like I'd bent the thing I meant to say into a metaphor accessible to anyone who's tried to take a picture of the moon or explain exactly how the moon had changed them. Impossible. Inside the prison, the classroom is a classroom, and students are students around an ordinary table discussing what it means to be human, as if humanity isn't something outside this classroom they are asked to prove over and over with their bodies, even here, lining up in the hallway for the guards to pat them down, as you and I take our seats on the far side of the classroom, so we don't have to watch. And now, if I were to mention the roses in the prison yard, everyone would read them as a metaphor for hope, or worse, some thorned beauty of survival. Wrong, because these roses are real and tended by women most forget are alive. And if I were to mention the birds, tilting and soaring, wild and uncountable, would that image of freedom be enough to free us, throw us back into looking away? Housework, May 2020. As the world narrows, our dominion grows. Finally, the world is all women. The home is everything, everything now. Keeping track of which vegetables are likely to turn next in the fridge, sweeping and planning and feeding, tending to elders by phone. The wariness we carry in public places, too. Are those footsteps too close? And yet, I find myself following the moon. Usually, I wouldn't walk at night. Beep, beep, a man says somewhere. Didn't want to scare ya. He throws back one more warning, wheeling by on bike. Watch yourself in this weather. The moon, I say, but he's already turned the corner. By now, perhaps you've noticed I contradict myself, or perhaps you ran outside to gape at the moon over the cemetery like I did. Penelope waited almost 20 years to see her household piled up with death. She ruled quietly, even as the plague of suitors infected the house, ate everything. Meanwhile, she orbited her own life as a satellite, so they couldn't touch her. Where is the epic of her life indoors? Like us, her work was slowing time and grief. Heading home, the street lamp shines brighter than the moon, churning with wings. It's May. I'm too late to shut out the lights to keep out the termite swarms already worming through the house's seams. I watch from the porch as darkness swallows the neighborhood. Tomorrow, I'll sweep their spent bodies into the tub and down the drain, but I'll find their wings flashing back little scraps of light for weeks. And now I'll read the winning poem, Guzzle at the End of the World, April 2020. Don't tell me you don't feel it too. Relief. Something finally stopped all of us at once, like a whistle in the schoolyard, freeze, on one leg balancing, finally stopped. The clear green waters of Venice, flowing with dolphins and swans, are just a fantasy glimpse of a post-polluted world. Our high-emission flying finally stopped. Experts say the mask I wear outside protects you more than me, but they don't know the pleasure I feel not recognizing my own reflection in car windows when out walking. That mirror gazing finally stopped. Erasing my spring calendar, I dimly recall how many times I've wished to slow down time. Not like this, of course. Now, the future begins somewhere near years from now. when the suffering finally stops. One of my neighbors died. The rest of us stood on our porches watching paramedics float around the Purple House in their protective gowns, trying to guess whose breathing finally stopped. My concentration is shot. I'm not writing. I can only read the things my students ask me to. Soon I'll submit their final grades, and this hydra-headed semester will be done. Teaching finally stopped. Alone in the house for months, I lose the sense of where my edges are, expanding until I imagine draping these walls around my body like a robe. All other daily dressing finally stopped. It was hours before Mr. James stepped out of his Purple House to say his nephew passed. Relatives arrived, distant until a downpour drove them close. The rain long passed when their wailing finally stopped. On another endless video call, the birds outside trigger my microphone to unmute as my days stretch on, screen-bound, indoors, waiting for someone else to finally stop the Zoom. I focus on my virtual backgrounds, dolphins, light moving against green leaves, aquarium scene. I can make parts of myself disappear by drinking from a glass, reverse genie summoning, finally stopped. I lost my job, not right away, like so many I love who are struggling now, but after quarantine, I'm never going back to the work, the office I love. Our thoughtful planning finally stopped. From here, summer is an unthinkable hot blank, and yet I long to leap for it. I try to explain to an internet friend that I don't have to be this Elizabeth anymore. All that performing finally stopped. Thank you.
Such a great poem. Thank you so much. And I finally found the document that I was scrambling to try to find in all of my open tabs as I was introducing you. And so let me do a much better job introducing you afterward. I'm so sorry. Elizabeth is a poet, translator, teacher, artist in New Orleans. This Body, That Lightning Show, her first full-length collection, was selected by Jericho Brown for the Hilary Tam Capital Collection of the Word Works and came out in 2019. Dear Escape Artist, a chapbook in collaboration with artist Sarah White, came out from Antenna in 2016. She co-translated and produced a new adaptation of Euripides' Bacchae at the Marigny Opera House in 2015. Her poems have appeared in the Fairy Tale Review, Painted Bride Quarterly, New Orleans Review, and are forthcoming in Green Mountain Review. She teaches interdisciplinary humanities for the honors program at Tulane University and co-organizes the Waves reading series. Thank you so much, Elizabeth Gross. Beautiful, beautiful reading. You can pick up some of her books via I think through Tubby and Coos. Yes, is that correct? Yeah. All right. Virtual bookstore hosted by Tubby and Coos. Okay. Up and reading next, we have the runner-up in the poetry category, Andy Young, whose poem My Mother's Skull is Opened for the First Time was chosen by Beth Ann Fennelly as the runner-up in the Words and Music Writing Competition. Andy is the author of 4 chapbooks, including most recently John Swenson, Dynamicron, as well as a full-length poetry collection, All Night It Is Morning. She teaches at the New Orleans Center for Creative Arts. Her work has recently appeared or is forthcoming in the Southern Review, Pank, the Journal of the American Medical Association, and the Cortland Review. Her translations with Khalid Higazi are featured in the Norton Anthology Language for a New Century, Contemporary Poetry from the Middle East, Asia, and Beyond. And I'm so excited to welcome Andy Young. Hello.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah. And yeah, do you have several poems you'll be reading for us?
I was going to read 3.
Perfect.
Shall I plow forth?
Take it away, madam.
Okay. Well, congratulations to Elizabeth, and thank you for that beautiful reading. And also thank you to Words and Music and One Book New Orleans, all the folks at Peauxdunque Review, and to Beth Ann Fenley for recognizing my poem. And also thanks to anyone taking time to tune in today. So I'll start with the poem that was recognized. And then I'll read another pretty sad poem, and then I'll end with something a bit more lighthearted. My mother's skull is open for the first time. Oh, I'm going to mention, actually, this is a syllabic poem. It's written with 5 syllables per line. So as I read it, I'm going to try to pause to kind of recognize that. Okay, my mother's skull is open the first time. Post-surgery scan shows inflammation, a gray sea around, a dark emptiness, hole where tumor lodged, size of a child's fist, shoving out frontal lobe tissue where lives personality, higher level cognitive functioning, no way to excise. Pathology says tentacles return, no matter standard of care or candles lit at St. Jude's shrine. My mother's devout. She touches her beads, still takes the wafer, wears lipstick with her headband of staples. And this next poem is, excuse me, a duplex based on Jericho Brown's inventive form. And you'll hear, if you're not familiar with the form, you'll hear it's written in couplets, and the second line repeats as the first line of the next couplet, and it kind of falls apart toward the end, as the speaker does. Pandemic funeral, a duplex. The day my mother's buried, light throws itself against the earth. Light throws itself against the earth, a bird against a window. Like birds in a window, my family's in the screen. My family inside a screen for her Facebook funeral. In a Facebook funeral, siblings sit a pew apart. All my siblings pulled apart. My father's masked and small. My father masked, a small animal from this distance. A distant animal. I watch the digital spectacle. A strange spectacle, a digital burial. Oh, and there are the grave diggers. Quit that shovel, man. Quit that wet plot where cannot be, that she's not here, that I'm not there. My mother, what is this plot? It cannot be. And I'll end with a new poem. I wrote a villanelle about the Four Seasons Total Landscaping Company because why not? And I think absurdity is helping me get through grief. So I wanted to share some of the absurd as we left. Four Seasons Total Landscaping Co. Near the bones and ashes, by the gleaming dildos, journalists and lawyers finally find the spot. The Four Seasons Total Landscaping Co. Cameras are flashing, the cacophony grows, a trash truck rides past. There's a waft of rot near the bones and ashes beside the gleaming dildos. There's shiny red squares tacked up in rows. A man slithers out, some gelatinous twat. The Four Seasons Total Landscaping Co. is not the place you think you know. Nothing of a hotel, though maybe you could squat near the bones and ashes beside the gleaming dildos. Who could foresee this is how it would go? Everything has come to naught at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping Co. A hazardous waste sign drips pale yellow on the man who exclaims and exalts. Oh, I've messed up I'm sorry, I have the wrong version here. Let's see if I can remember. A hazardous waste sign drips pale yellow on the man who whinges and lies. It's all he's got. Near the bones and ashes, by the gleaming dildos, at the Four Seasons Total Landscaping Co. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. That was absolutely the poem we need right now.
Sorry, I messed up at the end there.
No, that was brilliant. And two beautiful, heartbreaking poems, and then one to make us laugh. Thank you so much, Andy. Really, really wonderful work. I'm really excited. I'm really excited about all of our readers, but I'm also really, really excited because CNF is my jam, and our next readers are our winners and a runner-up from the CNF category. We have, and the CNF category was judged by the incredible writer and beautiful human, Kiese Lehman, whose memoir Heavy you might have heard of. He also is re-releasing, actually, I think this week, his essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, which is a brilliant, brilliant collection. But he chose as the winner of the CNF category, Look by Constance Adler. And Constance is the author of the memoir, My Bayou, New Orleans Through the Eyes of a Lover. Her stories have appeared in numerous publications, including Oxford American, the Utne Reader, Philadelphia Magazine, Spy Magazine, and Blackbird. Her profile of Mardi Gras float designer Henry Schindler in Gambit Weekly was honored by the Louisiana Press Association. She contributed an essay to Sheryl Gerber's photography book, Cherchez la Femme, New Orleans Women. And I am very excited to get to hear some of Look. Hello, Constance.
Hi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invitation to read. I'm so thrilled to be here and to be among these wonderful writers. And thanks to Words and Music also. And especially, I want to mention Candace Huber should get a special thanks for running this so precisely and smoothly. It's like she's the wizard behind the curtain, making all of this happen. So anyway, thank you for that. I'm going to just read the first few pages of Look, which is a pretty long story, so I can't give you the whole thing. I'm just going to let it speak for itself. So this is Look. The scene of the crime was a first grade classroom at Union Avenue Grammar School in 1968. There had been a Prague Spring, a Tet Offensive in South Vietnam, a charismatic minister who threatened white supremacy assassinated on the balcony of a Memphis hotel. Another beautiful Kennedy bled on the kitchen floor of a Los Angeles hotel, while a busboy cradled the dead man's head, fear and confusion plain on his face. That same year in Margate, New Jersey, I was 6 years old, and my teacher, Mrs. Zachariadis, wrote the word look on the chalkboard. Then she drew eyeballs inside the two middle letters O and O and completed the picture by adding long curly eyelashes. From my seat, I watched her and thought, what craziness is this lady up to now? Mrs. Zachariadis turned to face the room of first graders and pointed to each letter as she spoke the syllables L-O-O-K. By this time, I had learned my letters, had been dutifully singing Now I Know My ABCs, da, 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 but I didn't know what purpose this served. It was just a song. That day, as Mrs. Z sounded out the letters, I recognized them and thought, big deal, I know the alphabet, show me something new. I got the eyeballs picture, yeah, seen that before, but I was still not making the connection. Then Mrs. Z drew a slow chalk line from left to right underneath the letters, decorated to look like eyeballs, and spoke the word in a drawn-out, vowel-heavy pronouncement. Look. Oh, that was it. The ciphers, the sounds, the verb, the orbs at the front of my head. This process of knitting up realities, my ability to see all these truths, literal, physical, musical, and symbolic, fell overlapping onto each other and merged in one instant. A click of silver light coursed through me. My body married my mind. I felt my skull expand, a perceptible tectonic shift outward at the seams that joined these bony plates. I was going to need more room for my brain if this continued. Mrs. Zachariadis, what have you done to me? A door into the adult world swung open when you wrote those letters. In that moment, I understood how I would spend the rest of my life. For that, I have you to thank or blame, Mrs. Z, you monstrous alchemist. Still, it must be noted, my innocence was lost. First, a few words about my teacher. Mrs. Zachariadis was an ample woman given to wearing bright floral blouses. Wherever she moved, she issued a faint cloud, the fragrance in her hand lotion, I imagine, a clean and soothing scent. Her hair must have been dyed because that mink brown pelt was too rich to be real. She wore heavy black glasses like Buddy Holly, although I doubt that he was her style inspiration. More likely, she chose these frames for their practicality. Also, Mrs. Zachariadis favored fire engine red lipstick, which worked for her. She had the voice to carry that color. When she talked, she sounded like the whole trumpet section in an orchestra. When she smiled, her strong, red, lipsticky mouth stretched open to reveal a wide gap between her two front teeth. Imagine a cross between Ethel Merman and the Wife of Bath, and you're getting a sense of my first grade teacher. Frankly, she terrified me, and yet I loved Mrs. Zachariadis. I would do anything she asked of me. In retrospect, I can see that the way to contain a herd of 6-year-olds is to attain some mix of warmth and terror. My teacher held her classroom together with a surgeon's intuition for fine distinctions, when to use the scalpel of her wisdom and when to drop the hammer of her terrifying voice. For example, she was capable of shouting Mark Grable into abject submission. He was a sweaty boy who ran around the room planting his wet mouth on the face of each girl. What a mess that guy was. I can still recall his crazy eyes and florid complexion as he closed in on me. I would have shouted at him too had I the presence of mind to object. As it was, I remained frozen in shock and endured this assault on my face without resistance. When Mrs. Zachariadis was finished with Mark, he paid for his indiscretion with a trip to the principal's office, a fate we all dreaded. And anyone who went to the principal's office might not come back. It was the maw of hell, or so we all imagined, because that was how Mrs. Zachariadis characterized that trip down the hallway. An hour later, Mark did return as a chastened, smaller boy. He didn't kiss any more girls that day or any other that I knew of. No one had the nerve to ask Mark what unspeakable horrors he had endured. It was enough to see him reduced to slumped obedience. Something powerful in the principal's office had cut the fire right out of him. There was a day when my friend Regina and I were experimenting with tipping our chairs backwards to balance on the back two legs. It was my idea, and I had talked Regina into trying it with me. I wanted to see if it could be done. Could I hang in space, poised on my chair, not holding onto the desk, and keep shifting my weight a shade here and there, anticipating and compensating, just so to keep from falling? The danger excited me. This trick required concentration. We did not notice Mrs. Zachariadis approaching until we felt her firm grasp on our backs, slamming our chairs squarely onto all four legs. You know, I had a kid in my class last year who did exactly what you were doing, Mrs. Zachariadis said, bending over to bring her face level with mine. Her large red lips stretched with each word, showing the gap in her teeth, so close she could eat me. And then her eyeglasses, too, that framed her black eyes, boring into mine. That voice, my bowels turned to water. Do you want to know what happened to him? What could I say? Did I have a choice? Mrs. Zachariadis told us what happened to the boy who balanced his chair on two legs. It didn't go well for this kid. He fell over backwards and hit his head on the edge of the desk behind him. The wound in his scalp began to bleed profusely. Soon the floor of the classroom was submerged in his blood. Oceans of blood, according to Mrs. Zachariadis. No, rivers of blood, that was it. Rivers of red blood covering the floor. Regina and I sat transfixed by Mrs. Zachariadis and the lurid word picture she painted for us. Blood everywhere, she told us, sweeping her arms to encompass the whole room. We had to bring 3 mops and 4 buckets to clean it all. Until this day, I had no idea that one little boy had enough blood in him to cover an entire classroom of the Union Avenue Grammar School. Come here, I want to show you something, Mrs. Zacriadis said, beckoning us to follow her to the door. She pointed at the floor in the hall. There was so much blood, it even flowed like a river out to here. Hey, she collared a girl, a year older than us, passing by in the hall. You remember that kid who tipped back on his chair and hit his head? The girl nodded. And what happened? Blood everywhere, right? Oh, yeah, blood everywhere, the girl answered. Jesus Christ, was everybody in on this? We had to take him to the principal's office, said Mrs. Zacriadis. And it all came together right there, the doom of curious children who test the limits of good behavior and knowledge. First they bleed, and then they get in trouble. So Mrs. Zacriadis planted a hook in my soul that tethered me to an altogether new reality. With that one word on the chalkboard, look, she transformed me from a person who does not read into a person who does read. I'm grateful for a lifetime of reading. Still, I'd be less than thorough if I didn't contemplate what was lost when I gained the magical ability to read at age 6. I can't help it. I was the kid who learned the story of Helen Keller and then walked around the house with eyes closed and arms extended, feeling my way in the dark to experience what it was like to be sightless. Might there be another way of looking? My restless mind goes there. Before I learned to read, I lived like a dog, or so I imagined, a life free of the limits imposed with adult understanding and instead colored by a stream of supple, diffuse impressions that flowed over me, each new and utterly vibrant, a life free of structure or expectations or any sense of consequence, guided only by my own spontaneous nature. When I saw a door, I walked out because I felt like leaving, and the outdoors intrigued me. When it rained, I waited on the porch until my mother let me indoors. I knew it was time to eat when my stomach felt hungry. I lived by sight and sound and smell, the leafy maples rattling in the wind overhead on Winchester Avenue between home and school, the morning sun piercing my eyes, the juniper shrubs offering berries which, if I pressed my fingernail into one and held it to my nose, offered a quick green scent of something with no name that pleased me for reasons I could not explain. I could speak at age 6, of course, but words at that point were sounds in the air, not written, meaning attached to the words loosely because they were not inscribed. The written word gives permanence. The spoken word is ephemeral and webby, leaving room for interpretation, poetry, and misunderstanding. When the day came that Mrs. Zacriadis taught me to read, she ushered me into a realm of symbols where each thing is represented by graphic signs inscribed on paper with a pen or a pencil. Things are never themselves again once you learn to read. The mind trained to operate by symbols treats the pencil marks as real instead of the thing itself. Learning to read separated me from pure existence into a habit of describing existence. I almost can't remember the life I led before I could read. If I could choose, I'd ask for that young part of my brain to come back to the surface and run things for a while, the part that looks at the pink morning sky and doesn't form the words, pink morning sky, and instead simply, see, I can't even do it right here, right now. The words for talking about not reading do not exist. I am nostalgic for a return to a state that would place me in silence, empty of symbols but full of something unnameable. If I get there, I won't be able to tell you about it. Wish me well. Thank you. Thanks very much.
So great. Thank you so much, Constance. I love the imagery, the rivers of blood. So great. Oh, man. Yeah. Trying to think back, like, on who you were before you knew how to read. It's really, yeah, it's a strange concept.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for the prize and everything
reading.
for the reading. It's delightful.
Up next, we have an essay by Tiara Malone, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's called Mikey Go Boom, which might be my favorite title that I've ever heard. Tiara is a New Orleans transplant by way of Chicago. She's an all-in-one writer. Her poetry has been published by Partial Press. Her stage play has been read in Chicago, Atlanta, and New Orleans. She studied media, communication, and theater at Northeastern Illinois University in Chicago. And she also is the owner of a massage studio in Mid-City when she's also writing. I don't know how people juggle all of these things. You guys are amazing. So welcome, Tiara Malone, our Tiara Malone with My Boom. Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. No, like Elizabeth and like Elizabeth said, like it's such a interesting time to be writing and creating. But I think we've all managed to pump out some really great stuff just from what I've heard so far. So it's great to be here, and thank you. And I'm just honored that your eyes were on my work, and I'm excited to share this poem with you. It's happening in real time. Not this poem, this essay. It's happening in real time. So yeah, it should be interesting. Thank you so much. All right. So there's a very short inscription. It goes, "What we had to do to survive, none of them could do." By a rapper named Black Thought. The song is called 215. Mikey, look at you. Your face is chiseling into a sculpture of the man you'll become. Your voice oscillates between a squeak ripe with innocence and a powerful vibrating bass. Your primary concern and desire in life is not girls blossoming into womanhood or playing ball until you exhaust. You just want to drive. I want nothing more than to give you the key to my red 2007 Volvo. I want nothing more than for you to experience the freedom of the road. But I do have some concerns. There's no pretty way to put it. I'm scared. You'll be a black man in a red car in a bloody land. What a place to be 16. Nephew, I'm really writing this with no pen or a pad. From your auntie, your best friend, and your dad. We've all been made into unnatural beasts. Here I am. I'm 31, and soon I'll have legal guardianship of you. I've been so busying myself, avoiding the reality of this responsibility. I want to save your life, but I'm not built for saving. I'm only built for loving. If you ever see me doing anything other than loving, it's because I've learned that violence is a means of survival. I want to show you that you deserve more than that. You deserve liberation, peace, joy. I've been cooking up a stew that I hope will warm your soul. But like I always tell you, you're responsible for your own mind, body, and soul. I tell you all the time, read books, read any and everything. Give yourself what your teachers can't. Arm yourself with knowledge. Prepare yourself. They just killed George Floyd. I don't have to tell you that though. You biked down to the protest and you're a part of this American history. This year is serving us uncut truth. You're seeing for yourself the value of a Black life. What a time to be 16. I'm scared because I don't want you to be next. This is not an irrational emotion. My feelings aside, I never want you to inherit my fear. I only want to see you break into that smile where baby Mikey hides. I look at you and I just see your sense of wonder, your love for Vans, your ability. As much as I want to teach you to protect your neck, I want to teach you to protect your passions more. Cooking mac and cheese, defending women, bike riding. When we say your name, I can only hope it's not because you've met an ugly and untimely demise. Mikey, you were still so new to this world before you almost left it. You sat in the back seat as your mama made a turn that would be her last. You survived with a scar and a broken arm. For that, you're a magician. You're not ever afraid of danger or standing close to it because you were only a year old the first time you dodged death. And I wonder, with the way this country fears you, how much longer you can artfully dodge your departure. I don't mean to say hate always wins, but neither does love. So when I give you the red Volvo, I want you to hit every turn signal. Do not forget to hit your turn signals. This may be hard to hear, but I am not sure how to love you or myself even. I'm trying different ways to make love less painful for us both. I'm making an effort to teach you self-love even as I'm learning it on my own. I'm being explicit in my guidance because I don't want you to second guess who you are in my world, in this world. And still, I want you to create your own reality that may or may not include any of the things you've been taught. Explore what's real to you. Turn this thing inside out. Be a whole new Mikey if you want. What am I trying to say? How can I translate a lifetime of experience into loving you? I'm trying from my depths to give you something to hold on to. Listen, when you decide to go boom, it'll be a long time coming. You'll be well within your Black right. When you've headed up to your 4C bed of untamed wool, when your emotions go every which way like the kinks in your hair, I won't blame you. When you decide to go boom, it'll be a glitter bomb of Black abundance and a confetti of color coolness. Baby, when you make the choice to go boom, you'll free the ancestors yet to find a resting place. Your spark will light up this American sky. White happiness is safe, but Black happiness is the ultimate liberation. It's a soul train, a Tootsie Roll, a Dougie, and a Millie Rock. Black happiness is a whoa. It has the power to free us. I swear, my baby, you can free us all. People, get ready. These are the facts. You'll be a Black man in a red car in a bloody land. I'm scared, not just because they fear your impending dominance, but because you have absolutely no fear in you. I had a list of things I wanted to tell you, but I forgot most of them. It'll come to me later. I just want you to make it home safely, to make it to 17. So please, just remember to hit every turn signal for me, for us. And please, don't forget to hit a mean Millie Rock when the beat drops. 04 till infinity, Auntie Tiara, EXO. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
love
you.
it so much. So great. Ah. The next category we will be looking at is the Beyond the Bars category, which is really near and dear to my heart, and I know to the mission of One Book, One New Orleans. This year, the Beyond the Bars category was judged by Michael Zapata. Michael's debut novel, The Lost Book of Adana Moreau, was called Hypnotizing by the New York Times Book Review, and an expansive, big-hearted, and time-hopping debut by the Chicago Tribune. So just a little high praise there. Michael's the founding editor of Make, a literary magazine. He's the recipient of an Illinois Arts Council Award for Fiction, the City of Chicago DK's Individual Artist Program Award, and a Pushcart nomination. As an educator, he taught literature and writing in high school, servicing dropout students. He's a graduate of the University of Iowa, and he's lived in New Orleans, Italy, and Ecuador. He currently lives in Chicago with his family. Please help me welcome Michael Zapata.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I always say I was born and bred in Chicago, but New Orleans partitioned my soul. So I miss the city, and I want to say thank you to everyone at Words and Music. And I was very much honored, extraordinarily honored to be a judge for Beyond the Bars. Just to give you a little bit of a really powerfully important, award for students. I've worked for the majority of my professional life, not only as a writer, but also as an educator. And I taught for some time with students who had dropped out from school and who came back, who were coming out of incarceration or going into. And it is just an extraordinary endeavor by the literary organizations in New Orleans to invest not only in these words, but these words which form a certain type of storytelling and reality for students who find themselves incarcerated, for students who find themselves oppressed by systems beyond our control. And I'm a strong, insanely powerful believer that words not only tell stories, young people's stories, but the words themselves are a way to rebel and to reclaim a geography that is often written over young people. So I'm here to read the runner-up, Pain from the Streets by Griffin Baptiste Tadeau, who was not able to join us today. So I'm very honored to read his words, but just want to talk very briefly about what this poem sort of meant when I read it. It's a devastating witness of loss. It's a witness poem at its core, and it's told both with absolute tenderness and harrowing honesty. And of course, loss is always with us, despite a life that's been racing, as the poet says. And Pain from the Streets is also a recognition of how memory carries us through. So thank you, everyone. I was just honored to choose this piece as a runner-up. So I'm going to share it with everyone. Pain from the Streets by Griffin Baptiste Tadot. Sitting in a cell when I heard my brother died, told me to be patient. I was an only child. He had said I needed saving, so I'm praying to my God. Hurt me bad, mama crying because she lost her oldest son. Whole lot of pain hidden by a smile. Year before my 17th, I was banging, slanging fire. You would never guess that the things that have left me traumatized. Brother shot, hit with that pole, blood gushing from his side. Try running from pain, can't take this. Sipping lean, feeling like I have to get high. Bed lost in my mind, heart's vacant, never faking a thing, I won't lie. My grandmother say that never question, be blessed, you're alive. I know that this life's been racing, smash the pedal, try slowing, can't stop. I've been holding this, can't brace it, taking meds, but it keeps chasing. Never thought that they could phase me, now I miss my brother daily. Praying God and come erase this because it stabbed my heart like Jason and there's nothing to replace it. And now I'm left to say that I should find someone to help me move on. Didn't help to beg on my knees, please stay, so I've been keeping it strong, knowing I have an iceberg in my chest while my heart has been gone. Hope I don't freeze and repeat these days. I've tried to speak through this song. And that is the poem. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I know we have the winner coming up too with Deep Down. I just have a few comments I'd like to express before the winner comes on. And these are two very beautiful, powerful poems. Deep Down, just a few words I have for it are, it's both urgent and measured. It's sharp language and it burrows down farther and farther into a singular and powerful ancestral village. I'm not going to tell you what the ancestral village is, the poet will. It offers up a rare and stunning glimpse into the forgotten spaces between sleep and wakefulness, the past and the future. So I'm just extraordinarily honored to have selected it, Deep Down as the winner and to have selected as the runner-up, Pain from the Streets. And thank you, everyone, for giving space to not only youth, but giving a way in which youth can reclaim their own geography and memory.
Thank you so much, Michael, and thank you so much for agreeing to read that poem. So beautiful. And yes, we have Ryan.
Yay.
Ryan Heinsberg.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. Reading his winning poem, Deep Down, which Michael just did an absolutely beautiful introduction on. Hi, Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hello.
We're so excited to hear your winning poem.
This is Deep Down. This is how it starts. You know, deep down, I'm always awake, no matter how much I sleep. It feels like someone took my heart and put it on a stake. Demons never sleep, no matter how much they cut deep and rip apart. Boy, in my life, there's a little light. Words cut deeper than a knife. Stuck in the hell of a rut. When I sleep, I can't talk. Feel like my voice is cut. Always stuck in the part, walking in the dark. Asking the Lord, do I have a heart? For I do sin. Feel like a butterfly stuck to the wall with a pin. I'm in a wolf den with my kin. That's it.
Beautiful, beautiful words. Thank you so much. That was excellent. Yeah, demons never sleep, no matter how they cut deep. So beautiful. Thank you so much for reading for us.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it, and congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
All right. All right. The next category we'll be hearing from is the short story category, which was judged by Jamie Hatley, who is a brilliant writer, filmmaker, award winner, and just awesome human being all around. I love me some Jamie Hatley. And she chose This Body Also Dances by Titus Chalk as the runner-up. Jamie said, "A man is separated from his brother first by guilt and then by an ocean and his own happiness, it seems. After a childhood accident causes permanent damage to his brother's body, these siblings seem to drift apart, one to the land of the broken and one to the land of the whole. Tasked with sorting out his brother's apartment after his death, he comes to know him in a way that he never had before. In death, his brother manages to teach him about music, freedom, and joy. This Body Also Dances is a tender tale that challenges the notions of what a full life is and who gets to live one." Titus Chalk, who wrote This Body Also Dances, is a British writer. He's currently pursuing an MFA in creative writing at the University of Kentucky. He's also the author of Generation Dex, a personal history of the fantasy game Magic: The Gathering. And in his former life as a newsman, he was a recipient of the George Weidenfeld Bursary for British and German journalists. That is a mouthful. Please welcome Titus Chalk. Hi, Titus. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, thanks very much, April. Great to be here. Thanks for those incredibly kind words from Jamie. Thanks to everyone at the Peauxdunque Review and at the festival too. This is such a great opportunity, so I'm very grateful for it. I'm going to be reading from towards the end of the story, so I guess I'll just fill in a little bit more on what Jamie said in her sort of summary there. Brian, this chap's gone back to England to help clear up his brother's flat, Andy, after his death. And part of what he has to clear up is a big record collection. And he's just posted that for sale on Craigslist when we join him. And he's kind of ruminating in his flat, thinking about some of these differences with his brother who's got an atrophied hand from an earlier injury, and always refused to go to therapy after that. And he's doing this stuff, cleaning up, when his brother's lover, Tina, turns up. And Brian didn't know she existed. She's let herself into the flat, and she says she's come to collect some of her stuff. So they agree to kind of do this solemn task together. And as we join them, Tina is just pulling something out of the dead brother Andy's closet. So that's where I'll jump in. Brian had to lean over to glimpse what Tina was pulling from the trunk's interior. He flinched as she began to decant sex toys from the box to her handbag. "He liked me to do things to him," she said with a shrug. Dry-mouthed, Brian nodded again, suddenly aware of how innocent his sex life with his wife Gwen was, scared even it might not be enough. He was trembling, he realized. His stomach fell away as if he was rising very quickly in an elevator to a vantage point he wasn't sure he wanted to reach. Tina sighed again before a rueful smile lifted the corners of her mouth. She held up a platinum blonde wig, placed a palm inside it to give it shape, stroked it. "He felt so pretty," she said to the bedroom. And he was. Brian dropped the laundry basket and stumbled to the window, trying to lift the uncooperative frame higher with his forearms. He gulped down the cool grey outdoors, particulate and pearls of drizzle mingling on his palate. Slate rooftops gleamed, terracotta chimney pots puffed stoutly. TV aerials and satellite dishes stretched to the high street, where a siren of some kind was scything through the traffic. An ancient Bovril advert burnished the bricks of a nearby railway bridge in long faded paint. A sob caught in Brian's throat. "It's just a wig, Brian, a dress. I've taken my stuff, you can throw the rest out." It was Tina's turn to place a hand on his shoulder. Brian wiped his face with the back of his hand, his gaze still out beyond the window. "I don't understand." "Maybe you don't have to." It was the kind of thing his therapist Eva would say in her heavily accented English, thought Brian, the kind of thing she said when she encouraged him to let go of his guilt. He told her about the accident in their very first session together, when Sunshine alone had failed to lift the shadows from him, when Gwen had given him an ultimatum at the end of their first year in the US, to leave his stiff upper lip where it belonged, to join her for real in California by embracing the alien world of therapy. He and Andy had stayed at the building site the day of the accident, waiting until they could get on the stereo at home. Their dad would be watching Grandstand after 9 holes and a pub lunch. Mum would be carbonizing something from Robert Carrier's kitchen. They propped up the bag from the record store against a pile of bricks and kicked around a cheap football, while they dangled fags from their lower lips like the die-hard punks who moped at the shopping arcade. At some point, boredom gripped them, and Brian began to swing from the scaffold that had been their makeshift goal. Andy had the upper body strength to pull himself up onto the scaffold proper. He crouched on the uneven boards and reached a hand down to Brian. "Come on then," he said. "We'll get a good view from up here at least. Reckon we'll be able to see the windsurfers on the reservoir." Brian's hand disappeared inside Andy's. He groped for a handhold, tried to wedge his feet against something. Finally, he joined his brother on the rough-hewn planks and dusted off his hands. "All right, fella," said Andy, beaming at him. The scaffold trembled in the breeze. Brian gripped the pole and felt the cold steel warm in his sweating palm. Ignoring the pounding blood in his ears, he said, "Can't see shit from here, really. Should we go one higher?" A ladder at the end of the gantry beckoned them upwards. Andy led the way. It was all right, thought Brian. You got used to it. The wooden boards bounced underfoot like the rickety-rackety bridge at the country park. He took exaggerated stomping steps, imagining himself in steel-capped boots, wearing a hard hat and tool belt, working with the lads. But one of his stamps scattered the planks beneath him. He shrieked and caught the handrail under his armpit, one foot swinging from the walkway. Andy spun around. "Fucking hell, you scared the shit out of me," he said. "Come on, come here, slowly now." But as Andy trod on the loosened planks and Brian shifted his weight, the boards scissored open. A prong of rust-red rebar skewered Andy's arm as he landed. Brian slithered to the end of the scaffold and tried to reach him, but his whole body was shaking and he had no idea how to shin back down to the ground. He howled the word help until the letters got mixed up and collapsed into something more guttural. A dog walker found them, a middle-aged man in a barber with a frantic cocker spaniel. After coaxing Brian from the scaffold, he bundled him into the back seat of his Rover. Raindrops began to pock the ground around them and explode against the windscreen. Brian tried not to be sick. In front of them, the ambulance carrying Andy hurtled towards the hospital, its flashing blue light painting the sky like some angry Greek god. "It was all my fault," he whispered through tears to Tina. All she could do was shrug. "Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't," she said. "Boys will be boys." "Or not," said Brian. "True, true," Tina laughed, and Brian found a smile somewhere in the corner of his sadness, pressed it just for a moment into service. "Here," said Tina, "come with me." Brian followed her as she led him back into the living room. "Sometimes," she was saying, "we just dressed up and danced." She was changing the record, putting on Donna Summer. "Should have bloody played this at the funeral," Tina said, twirling away from the record player. His guilty pleasure. Brian didn't know if she meant the music or her. "So," she said, "let's have a bloody good dance for him." Brian sniffed, began tapping his toe. I'm sorry for how ashamed of himself he was." "Then just imagine how beautiful he felt," she said, when he moved his body. The music began to crest its irresistible wave. Tina tugged Brian's sleeve as if she was pulling him from the sidelines of a school disco. He edged out into the middle of the living room, feeling ridiculous. But Tina grinned at him, then shook out her ginger hair as she padded back and forth on the balls of her feet. Brian could see now how little she cared about normal rules and how good she must have been for Andy. He began to jerk his shoulders a little, move his hands as if operating tiny levers, looking past Tina to a spot on the wood chip wallpaper, then meeting her glance with a smile. Tina corkscrewed up and down, the way she jiggled her wrists, making a silver bracelet click and clatter. Brian twisted his hips now and pumped his arms. He bobbed his head, jerked his knee, and pivoted around his left foot. He pretended his white socks were finding pockets left in the carpet by Andy, feeling out the steps he took into his fantasy, his intimacy with Tina. Brian thought of Gwen, of dancing with her at their wedding, of wriggling their toes together in wet sand at Morro Bay, of when her dad died and she lay in bed for a week refusing to eat, of the day she went back to school to start her PhD. He couldn't wait to get back to her and leave England behind for good. His phone began to vibrate on the coffee table. He snatched it up and Tina turned the music down a bit. He was almost laughing and a little out of breath, but the caller didn't seem to notice. Are the records still for sale?" Brian repeated the caller's question aloud. Tina stopped dancing. Brian felt himself shrink under her gaze, cupped the phone and turned to the side. Donna Summer's voice soared over the snapping beat and careening synthesizers. Brian turned back to Tina. She put her hands on her hips and quizzed him with an eyebrow. "I'm afraid not," said Brian into the phone. "I think I've found someone for them." Tina clapped, then darted into the bedroom. She returned with the wig and dress, and ignoring Brian's protests, settled the blonde tresses on his head and pressed the garment into his hands as if it were a dance partner. "Go on," she said, as she turned up the volume again. "Dance with him." I can't, said Brian. Oh, come on, of course you can. And Brian remembered the last time he saw Andy before finding him ashen in his hospital bed. They'd goodbye at the airport after his 10-day visit to Los Angeles. Will you be all right, though, back home? Brian had asked. You know, I think I will be. This trip's done me good. Brian bit his tongue. I know what you want to say, Brian. You've been saying it for years. Brian went to interject. No, just let me finish. I'm okay, Brian. I feel like things are moving in the right direction. Brian nodded, stuffing his hands into his pockets, casting his eyes around the tumult of the departure lounge to avoid meeting his brother's eyes. Come here, little brother. And despite his frustration, Brian let Andy throw his left arm around him and pull him to him as close as he could. Now in Andy's flat, he draped a sequin sleeve over his shoulder, thrust out his chin and clasped the dress against his body. And as Tina whooped, he pirouetted across the room, picturing himself splashed in the dazzle of a rotating mirror ball, suspended on a never-ending scaffold that climbed past stars into an indigo evening sky. Beneath the infinite canopy, the room became the living room of their childhood home, the furniture pushed to the sides, ornaments vibrating on the plaster mantelpiece, air freshener blanketing the stench of their surreptitious cigarettes, as Andy, gurning with appreciation, turned from their dad's hi-fi to Brian, then broke into unbridled laughter. The sound reverberated in the heavens. Sweat tickled Brian's face. He licked his lips and closed his eyes, and from somewhere, starting in his toes, he felt his own dumb laugh rise up inside him and convulse his entire body before it crashed over his tongue and past his rattling teeth.
Yay. Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Beautiful, beautiful story. Wow, man, so much great imagery throughout. Before we bring on our last reader, who was the winner of the short story competition, I just want to note we also did a high school short story category for the Words and Music competition. And unfortunately, neither of those readers were able to be with us today. The high school short story category was judged by Maurice Carlos Ruffin, who wrote We Cast a Shadow, and also has a short story collection coming out sometime in the near future. And I believe the title of that is going to be The Ones Who Don't Say They Love You, or The Ones Who Don't Say They Love Us. Anyway, there's love. Anyway, Maurice selected XOXO Zion by Deja Robinson as the 2020 winner in the public high school short story category. And he also selected Breaking by Percy Unger as the runner-up. And we're sad that they weren't able to join us today, but I did want to note that those two budding writers. So finally, it is time for us to celebrate the winner of the Words and Music short story competition, Katie Devine's The Extraction. Jamie Hatley, who judged this category, said, "In The Extraction, the unlikely combination of a broken tooth, an alligator, a missing limb, and a trip to Italy collide to form the backdrop of a story about guilt, grief, and shame. A young protagonist attempts to deal with her part in a tragic accident that has changed the DNA of her family." Reminiscent of Bobcat and Other Stories by Rebecca Lee, the characters in The Extraction are full of gaps, both physical and psychological, searching for a path to a kind of wholeness. Katie Devine is an MFA candidate at the New School. Her fiction has received support from Sirenland Writers Conference, Tin House Summer Workshop, Aspen Summer Words, and is forthcoming in Pithead Chapel. She works in media brand partnerships and lives in Brooklyn with her dog, Eliza Hamilton. And that is the most adorable dog name.
Thank you.
What kind of dog is Eliza Hamilton?
She is a mini sheepadoodle.
Oh, the doodles. Man, they get me. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And I look forward to hearing some of The Extraction.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody at Words and Music. I'm so excited to be included in the readings today with all these incredible writers. I also have to thank Ms. Jamie Hatley for choosing this story, Peauxdunque Review for giving it a home, and everybody who touched this story along the way, especially my new school crew. So I'm just going to read the opening. So I don't think you need to know more than what Jamie said about it in the intro. This is the extraction. Somewhere below the examination room painted with yellow sunbursts, near the bottom of the mountain, but not as far down as the sandy beach and seaside restaurants, the bells of the tile-domed cathedral are ringing, the sound reverberating against the dramatic cliffs of this town filled with tourists like us. The bells begin ringing every morning at 7, the number of tolls signaling the hour. It's the first thing I hear when the anesthesia begins to wear off. I count to 11. I missed the bells at 10. My 9 o'clock appointment began at 9:25, which my mother said was on time for Italians. The dentist, also the town's mayor, had promised I would be able to keep the cracked tooth he extracted, but as I look into his too close together brown eyes, he tells me it broke into tiny pieces and could not be saved. His accent makes it sound like he is singing. Please stop crying, my mother says from somewhere beyond my focus, though it doesn't feel like I am crying, so how can I stop tears I can't feel? This is a prescription for the antibiotics so she does not get an infection, and this is the one to stop the pain, he tells my mother. I wonder if they will be white and divided by a line like the pills my father takes now before he falls asleep on the couch, sometimes still sitting up, his head drooped forward onto his chest, where a little wet circle forms on the neckline of his shirt from the drool that sneaks out of his open lips. Maybe we can take our pills at the same time, and he can put his good arm around me, and my mother will stop yelling about money, and I won't have any more nightmares about his accident when we sleep sitting up together. No pain medication, grazie, my mother says to the mayor dentist or the dentist mayor. She tells him we are very grateful he could see us on a Saturday morning, even though no one has asked me if I'm grateful. We hike the hot, steep stairs that will bring us back to the peach-colored villa. 261 steps, my sister counted yesterday. The cotton gauze in my mouth is already soaked, and I want to pull it out to see if it's wet with my spit or my blood, but I know my mother would find this unacceptable. She holds onto my arm as though she is steadying me, but really is pulling me forward faster than my body wants to move. The edges of the stairs blur and trick my foot, which lands hard and earns me her narrowed eyes. My selfishness has ruined the day she was most looking forward to, she says, and also I have no willpower. The church bells below belt out a single bong. It echoes forever, but the sound is muted, like I have cotton in my ears too. Grace wants to see the tooth when we arrive at Villa Pesca, but I don't have anything to show her, and the dentist told me not to open my mouth too much today, so I pretend I cannot speak and have to write notes instead on a little spiral notepad I find in the kitchen and show only to her. The dentist had ugly black hairs covering the top of his hands that tickled my face. His office smelled like mint toothpaste, but his breath smelled like Dad's espresso. The words grow fuzzy, and I lie down on the unforgiving bed in our dark room. Grace lies down next to me and drapes one arm and one leg over mine as she faces me, and I wonder if this is how we slept together before we were born. We have the same face and the same hair and the same body, except everything is smaller on her. I can't remember if this still qualifies us as identical. I always get to be the older one. When Grace turns 10 next month on the first day of 5th grade, I will already be 10 plus 8 minutes. Grace thinks our mother began to hate me after our dad's accident at Disney, but I am certain she hated me right from the beginning, the moment she named me Enid. I watch my own face in the mirror when I say it, how my lips stretch into something ugly when they form the E. In the hospital pictures I found buried in the kitchen junk drawer, our father is the one cradling me, his palm bigger than my newborn head. I am red and bald that day, already wailing. My mother is not in any of the pictures. At night in our bed in Villa Pesca, the bells still pealing long after we are meant to be sleeping. Grace across from me, exhaling soft puffs through barely parted lips. I return to the alligator. How mesmerized I was when I first saw its narrow-set amber eyes, because I had never seen anything so still move so quickly. How I thought I could hear it blowing bubbles in the water and smell its brackish, swampy breath. How our mother had only that morning warned us to never go down to the water alone. How the air was thick and sticky against my skin, and mosquitoes and gnats buzzed around my head, and I didn't think I would be able to breathe if I didn't go closer to the water, even though I knew I was not allowed. How even as the gator opened its mouth to reveal rows of pointed yellow teeth that would sink into the muscles near our father's shoulder when he jumped in its path to save me, I was remembering that our second grade teacher, in the lesson about the predators of Central Florida, had assured us that alligators do not eat people. Tonight, as the bells get all the way to 11, I pull the blood-soaked gauze from my mouth and leave it on the bedside table, knowing it will stain the wood, risking my mother's anger. My father told me sometimes she is short with me because she's scared, like this morning when she had to pace in the waiting room while I was under anesthesia. He said she was worried about me and didn't want to make me worried by telling me that, but it always just feels like she hates me. I maneuver my tongue until the tip fits inside the crater the tooth once lived in. It's stringy and also gummy, like something left behind that hasn't yet died. I wonder if the holes the alligator left in my father were the same, if they were swollen and puckered, if they missed the rest of his arm, if they contained those long pink strands and tasted like pennies. I'll stop there. Thank you so much.
And tasted like penance. So, so great. Thank you so much, Katie. And all of our readers. This has been just an incredible, incredible reading. And I want to congratulate all of our contest winners and runners up. You guys sent us incredible work, and we had so much fun reading and enjoying your work. And thank you all. This concludes our reading. And again, I just want to thank you all for coming. If you are able to, please support the Words and Music Festival by, donating what you can. They're trying a new thing this year where instead of charging ticket prices, they're allowing everyone to have access and just donate as they're able. So if you can throw a few dollars their way, suggested donation is $10, but anything helps. So thank you all again for joining us today. Hi, Megan. Hi.
Okay, thank you so much, April, for being the powerhouse MC from the Peauxdunque Review. Thank you also to the Peauxdunque Review for all of your involvement in Words and Music, not only this year, but in the past. This has become a really amazing partnership. The folks at the Peauxdunque Review have curated not only this event, but also last night's 3 and 4 reading, issues 3 and 4 reading. And then they've also curated tomorrow's panel, Justice and Inclusiveness of Vision in the Modern Southern Periodical. Well, they're going to have the editors of Scalawag, Bitter Southerner, and the Oxford American all in conversation. And those were mainly the brainchild of Peauxdunque powerhouse Tad Bartlett. And Tad Bartlett is just one of our guest curators for this festival. And I really want to take a moment to recognize them because they are the folks who have said, hey, I'd really like to see this, and I'm willing to do the work that would make it happen. So they're part of our steering committee: Tad, Antoinette D'Alteris, Kelly Harris DeBerry, Stacy Balkin, Anel Lopez, Christopher Luis Romaguera, Kim Vaz DeVille, Carmen Wong. They have really done the legwork to make a lot of this magic at this festival happen. So them and all the other people you see listed on the steering committee, thank you so much for your work. I'm really excited about the next session because it was actually curated by one of the guest curators, Anel Lopez, and it will feature one of the people that you saw just now, Michael Zapata. He'll be reading and talking about The Lost Book of Adana Moreau, along with Margaret Wilkerson Sexton, who will be talking about her book, The Revisioners, and Maisie Card, whose book I am going to butcher because I cannot remember the order of the words, so I'd rather not say it than get it wrong, but her book is awesome. I read an excerpt. And that will be at 4:45. Home and Haunting is the panel discussion, and Anel basically built it from the ground up. Thank you guys so much. And don't forget, like April said, to support the festival, do what you can. Those links, even if you're not watching live, don't die. The links are live even when we are not. So you can click that link. You can hit that PayPal and PayPal wordsandmusicnola@gmail.com, or you can text WAM20 WAM20 to 421. Like April said, suggested donation is $10, but we will take one, or we will take 1,000, or anything in between, whatever you can give. COVID has hit us all hard, so we're really trying to, as April said, make this accessible on a donation basis, and we appreciate the support. It goes to help One Book, One New Orleans year-round mission to get books where they are needed most, and to get educational curriculum to adult education programs, also to host free community programming. Since the pandemic began, y'all, we have given away a record 2,300 books and counting to folks who need them most. So support our work. We will be back at 4:45 with Home and Haunting. I will see you all around the way. Bye.